How's everybody feeling on the last day? Can I get a last woo?
Yeah.
That's what's up. Okay, I am joined on the stage by three of the bravest partners you've ever met because they are the ones responsible for everyone's hangover Tuesday morning. We threw the Possible After Dark party, and it was a great event. We are forever grateful to my three guests here, and I will have them introduce themselves and what they do for their businesses. Let's start with you.
Hi, I'm Andy Good. I'm the SVP of Strategy for OpenX. I'm not sure how to describe what I do because it's kind of the clues in the title.
He plays a lot of guitars.
I play guitar as well. Not now.
Hi, everyone. I'm the SVP of Global Sales for Human Security, and been there only about 12 weeks, so formerly at the trade desk. Yeah, here we go.
There we go. Hi, my name is Nick Risher, CEO of TriCoast Media. We're a lot of things, but we are started as a publisher and now an audience curation network.
Okay, first, a little off script, really easy. Just talk about your experience here. How's it been for you? You had a good time at the party, and kind of where's your next go? Where can we find the three of you next in a major way?
Is that a trick question about the...
No, it's no trick. It's no trick.
It's been hot. I think it's a bit sweaty, and that's not just the nightclub on Monday. I think it's been a fantastic event. It grows every year. It expands beyond the Fontainebleau. There's some fantastic vendors here, and honestly, the conversations, it's such an excellent point of the year to check in, be able to see what's happening as far as the industry is trending and where people are at. Look, where you find me next, let's get a can.
Great idea.
Yeah, I mean, on that, so I've had a wonderful week. I think it's a great event that starts with just so much energy. There's people everywhere. Great place to run in and have the casual conversation, but also really sit and have a much more pointed conversation about what's changing, what's happening. I also think it's a wonderful precursor to Cannes. Great way to kind of warm up for, hey, this was a great conversation. Let's do it again. Let's have a higher level conversation. But I've seen a lot of different levels of people here, so it's great to have high level, casual, this, that, and get to different parts of the organization. And so that's been surprising, just how many different parts of an organization are here, and listening to all that's happening in the industry. But Cannes is where you'll find me next.
I'm saying, and you would not know this maybe, but this party animal right here is the reason the whole Possible After Dark thing got started. I just learned that story. Nick initiated that he wanted to do something at Live. Possible connected him to us, and we've. This is your second or third year throwing this party? Second year, yeah.
But
yeah.
Phil definitely helped in that connection. So yeah.
And Phil is another one that wears way too many hats. I don't know how he does it. Okay, shout out to Phil. Okay, so because he's right there. Okay, so I've got some questions for each of you, but you're all welcome to answer them, right? But this one is specifically for Andy. We talk a lot about programmatic, and there's a little bit of a veil, I think, over how it all works because it's very technologically complex. So can you demystify, any of the complexities there, and how do you talk to your customers about it so they understand what they're getting into when they buy programmatic?
Yeah, I think it's, as you set out that question, you talk about the complexity, perhaps some opacity that exists. And look, truthfully, that's probably the biggest existential threat to programmatic. And I don't mean that in a too much of a hyperbolic way. And it's something that needs to be unpacked. I think when we talk to our clients, and actually just for the industry at large, we have to start talking about, we've rebranded ourselves as the intelligent SSP for a reason. And we think about intelligence being something that's critical for the success of programmatic. Look, there's too much complexity being masqueraded as sophistication right now. What I mean by that is we live in a time within programmatic where buyers have an embarrassment of riches of tools available to them. Yet we're still in a situation where too many buyers are unable to really understand how the dollar tracks down to the impression. So when we talk about intelligence, when we talk about the intelligent SSP, it's really about how do you cut through that complexity to surface quality inventory, data, responsible performance tools in order to make sure that there is a line of sight. Look, the reality is if you're not doing that, then really you can't be a responsible custodian of spend. I'm sure we'll talk about it. There's plenty of other things that can happen. I'm sure Laura can talk about it as well. So yeah, that's probably sort of like how we'd frame it.
That's a good segue. I was going to ask Laura, how do you cut through and more so like how do you communicate that there is trust there, and that's something that working with you you're able to display that. So how do you do that?
So for those that don't know who Human is, if you've heard of White Ops, we rebranded as Human about 3 years ago. We're pretty much the IVT gold standard that is making sure everything across the digital internet is safe, is the human and the person that you want to see. So we see 80 trillion data points a month. We are the source of truth for Amazon and Google and Trade Desk and many other SSPs and DSPs in the mix. So the amount of data that we're seeing, it really comes down to the visibility, right? So, and how you are working with a partner to understand am I reaching the right people? Or am I able to trust based on the tech that I'm using that is actually a human or not? That really comes down to how you harness data. So when I look at those 80 trillion data points, that is our right to harness data into our tech to help our customers feel good about the intent of that impression, that they're making the right decision on that impression. So I think a lot about how we use data for good, how you should demand as a brand from your SSP or DSP partners granular data, so to create the visibility that you're talking about. So that when you work with OpenX or you work with someone else, that you are getting to where that brand is spending their dollar and getting to where they want to be. When you work with a technology partner that sees that much, you can trust that the intent of that and the decision that's being made in that millisecond is the one that you can feel valid about. I think the whole thing I know we're going to talk about this, but the non-human side of the internet is going to shake the whole thing up.
Well, and then Nick, why don't you talk a little bit about TriCoast, and in doing so, talk about the importance of owning your own content and how that might help with monetization.
Yeah, I think for us as a publisher, we have a big library. We're a distribution company, and that helped us kind of get into those relationships with publishers. As an audience curation network, we needed to really forge those relationships, and having content to use as leverage was really helpful, like giving those publishers access to our library, being able to give them better rev share rates, asking for cheaper rates in return, kind of created that like flywheel, which was really kind of interesting. And I think those relationships are important because they need content. You kind of control that relationship. You don't control the relationship. It gives you more control over the relationship. So yeah, it's great.
And are you owning a lot of content now these days?
Yeah, we have about 5,000 titles that we give to a lot of the OEMs and a lot of the publishers. And so that helps us kind of bring that audience together that we can curate.
Okay. Back to Laura. Is the industry really aware of the amount of fraud? And is that conversation, first of all, we don't really know exactly, right? So maybe pull the veil back on that, how prevalent that is or how much that's been, adjudicated and cleaned up with current technology. But, what level of issue is that for you? And then maybe you can all even answer that because you all have to give metrics back to the client, and there needs to be the way to have some trust in all the knowledge that's being delivered and all the numbers that are being delivered. So start with Laura, and then maybe everybody take a shot at that.
So I think, I was on a panel earlier this week, and the last question of the panel was, what will we all be talking about at Possible next year? And I answered it that we will all be talking about and sitting in a room and saying, hey, this is what I'm doing about my agentic traffic, or this is what I'm doing, or what should I be doing? Not that it's coming. So As Human, we actually put about a month ago our quadrillion report out, and really it talks about, actually, it's a little scary as a consumer because when you read it, you're thinking I should never use a password twice on a site because of the amount of fraud that actually is happening. And so when we look at that, I think the more, it's really about the change in traffic. So, right now, more than 50% of the internet is synthetic. Synthetic is not just agents, right? It's LLM scrapers, and scrapers can be good or bad, right? If you're Nike.com, you don't necessarily want Adidas scrapers scraping your site, but you certainly want chat scrapers scraping your site to bring that data back in, right? But understanding, because there's about 4 different, you have bad bots, you have LLM scrapers who are doing sometimes good and sometimes bad, you have agents that are acting on behalf of humans and creating that agentic commerce situation that's happening, and then you have humans. And those 4 different audiences should get a totally different experience on your site. So e-commerce, travel, hospitality, they are needing to have that opportunity to have visibility into what's happening, and then also get into that driver's seat to be able to control what you want that experience to be on a site. So if I'm Laura and I'm planning a trip to Japan next year with my family, with 3 kids and my husband, if I use my agent to go do that, Marriott certainly wants to be able to return back to that, right? They want to tell you which places in Japan to stay. But that's just a text back that you want to deliver back to them, or maybe you want that agent to be in a couple of pages. But if you're me, you want me to go to your product pages and see your hotels. And so there's this opportunity to have visibility at a very granular level to, one, be able to understand, am I not using money to drive people to my site that isn't actually converting, but also to understand the intent and be able to control and change the experience you want those 4 different audiences to have in your site. But read the report, it's very interesting.
You want something else, Andy, or you want that one?
I guess it's kind of more of a thought. We were talking about this on Monday. I think we've got to be very careful as well when we're talking about fraud. And I think you've painted the picture really well.
I agree, and I don't want to paint this air of like dystopian negativity around the systems, because by and large, it's not about that at all.
No.
It's just something that seems to be recurringly coming up.
So I remember back a long time ago.
20 minutes?
Yeah, about breakfast time. We were discussing fraud. This was 2010 sort of time. And so look, this is clearly not a new thing. I remember taking issue with the head of the IAB in the UK, who made a declaration that 30% of everything was fraudulent, and I called BS, because we don't know what's fraudulent. You're never going to know. That's why companies like Human are so valuable. That's why it's so valuable for OpenX to make sure that we're integrated and partnering with those businesses to be able to provide that to customers. It's a cat and mouse game, and the game changes every, I don't know, you tell me, 6 months, 2 months, every day. And it's vital that we are vigilant about these things. It's vital we don't misclassify things as fraud when they can be assistive to the environment, to publishers. But it's a critical area, and it's one, if you want to say what we're talking about next year, yeah, we'll talk about it next year, we'll talk about it the year after, and until we're not here.
I think one of the most interesting things that's happening with fraud, and as we think about that in the media space, is, as we create and use agents, this world of why the CMO and the CISO care is those 2 things that used to be bought or not, right? And so then your security team was great. You felt good as a media, buyer that everyone I'm driving there, the bad's out, the good's in. But now you have this different signal coming in, and there's so many different decisions to make on that. So now your security team and your media team have different problems for a reason, but they're all coming from the same place, right? And so I think, the visibility and the ability to sit in the driver's seat and control how you want to adapt to what is the wild, wild west, and not have it happen to you, but rather you control what's happening, is how I think a brand can get ahead, and how a partner like, and even how an agency can be a thought leader in how they want to talk to their brands.
And so we're talking a lot about scale and authenticity and quality, and that's, as far as content distribution goes, that's probably a lever that may or may not be easy for you to balance. Nick, talk about how you balance scale and quality across the network.
Well, I mean, look, there are advertisers that want reach and frequency, and then advertisers that want quality. At the end of the day, the people behind those screens are still humans, and it's about kind of like, who are those humans? Does someone watching, Netflix is different, right? Than who are those people, right? So they're all just humans. But I think, how do you get that scale is SPO, supply chain optimization, merging the SSPs and the DSPs and getting closer and closer to that, that publisher. I think that's really important. Using the tools that human has to, identify fraud is super important with that, to get that scale. I think you put enough of those publishers together that are smaller publishers, you have a reach. It doesn't mean it's lower quality, it's there's a bigger pool of smaller publishers. I still think, premium publishers, they have more scale because there's more people watching them. But it doesn't mean they're not necessarily less than. But yeah.
Well, okay, so we're delving in and out of AI, but let's get back into it. So how do you think, there was a point in time when the blockchain was supposed to solve everything, right? It was supposed to be the ultimate, qualifier, identifier. That gallon of milk is tracked all the way back to Bessie, the cow that made it, and how long it's been on the shelf, et cetera. And that has yet to really kind of, ring true throughout the industry. It's certainly made a lot of paper Bitcoin millionaires, but not quite, lived up to that level. And now we're seeing this with AI, where it's, eventually it's supposed to solve everything. So much so that we don't have to work and we'll have a universal basic income. That's just a hilarious thing to consider. But how is it helping either of your businesses right now? Either to mitigate fraud or to help with content creation, or, it's pretty core to what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, but give us all an example of how this technology is helping to move the business.
Yeah, I think there's probably a lot of people that empathize with the fact that we talk about AI right now, and it's a label that gets slapped onto everything. As I know about OpenX, AI has actually been a bedrock of so much what we've been doing before AI became a thing, and I think that's probably true for a lot of businesses. The advantage of AI is that it allows you to do a lot of things, complex things, quickly. And for us, you asked for one example. When we within our curation product, OpenX Select, within that we have deal discovery, which enables people to look at a particular type of audience or a brief, and then be able to extract from that appropriate audiences and packages based upon historical performance and so on. I think the danger is with AI being slapped onto anything is that it allows you to do a lot of things faster. But if the underlying substrate of what you're doing is crap, if you excuse my language, sorry, then you're just going to buy crap faster. And I think that's the big watch out. So it's not a panacea to everything. And there's something we talk about, which is, well, how do we define intelligence? And sorry to go back to that, but I think it's important. It's not just about doing things because you can, because there is AI attached to it. It's really thinking very carefully about why we're doing these things, how we're deploying them, so that they are intuitive, easy to use, provide demonstrable value. And I think that's the most important thing, because AI is whatever you want it to be, but it's got to have done with care and thought.
When ATMs started coming in to the world of banking, everyone was worried about bank tellers being gone. But if you look at the graph, it stayed the same.
I thought you were going to say everyone was worried about it getting jacked at night using the machine
Yeah.
with their backs. but right, the tellers.
It stayed the same, and people's jobs changed. They weren't people weren't lining up to cash their checks on Friday, they were just depositing them. So it gave bank tellers like the ability to, you know, open credit cards, do mortgages, do 401ks, like more important things. And I think that's what AI is going to do in this industry. It's going to allow us to do more important things than, you know, go through, you know, a bunch of different line items that could be done by AI. I think with fraud, you know, it'll be easier for AI to produce fraud, but at the same time, you know, we'll have AI kind of blocking fraud as well. So I think those are important things. But I think in the CTV industry or in the world of curation, I think you need to have that strong foundation, because if you don't have that kind of strong foundation, then AI doesn't really help do anything. You know, so I think having that core, you know, strong foundation and getting demand partners that, you know, that you can be flexible with their campaigns is also really important. Showing that you have these tools that use AI to like make your life better is great, but showing that you can be a flexible human per campaign, I think, is important.
Great analogy with the teller. And you mentioned, Laura, that, well, first, show of hands. Who's using agents out there? 1, 2. Okay, not bad, not bad. Bunch of smarties. I haven't yet, although I would love to. I would love to build an agent that can, you know, do cold calling for me. Now, that may or may not be a horrific experience, but to your point, I can spend a lot more time caring for the clients I do have if I don't, you know, have to spend so much time finding others. But I'm not there yet. You mentioned for booking travel, which was a great example. So are you using agents? Do you encourage it? And is it a part of your overall platform to have clients start doing that?
I'm still searching for the agent that'll do laundry for my family, but that has not been invented yet. If anyone wants to invent that, let me know.
I thought that was Optimus.
Internally, we actually, you know, we're driven by, of course, AI. We are using that. We're seeing AI traffic to train our models. That's where I talk about the harnessing of data. So I don't actually think we're going to replace jobs, right? The jobs are going to shift. They're going to be, think about, you know, when digital blew up, right? There was so much more data to have to understand and harness and look at all the jobs that came, you know, analytics became a totally different perspective and need in a market. So I think you're just going to have a different need for what we need to do to train models, to analyze data, to understand things. It's just the skill set will shift, right? So for our children, their skill set and the need that they have will be different than the things that we've all done. But we use agents and we build agents to help our sales team all the time, right? Like there is so much that you can harness, so then you are out spending time on the right things, or you're showing up in a much more relevant way because you've pulled something interesting of someone who's the person you want to talk to sat on a stage and said these 4 things, and now I'm able to use that into an email to you to have my team talk to you in a different way. So I think the relevancy of, you know, it's that value exchange when consumers for the last 10 years are being asked to basically give their information away or not. As soon as you understood there was a value exchange there, then you're like, okay, we can do this because my life gets better because I trust you and you trust me. I think that will continue to be what happens with agents and how we use them, how brands use them, how agencies use them, but how we all interact with them. Though we are still in that, is there going to be a positive value exchange for me? It'll stop and crack the minute one of these gets compromised and everyone's identity is stolen for a day, right? But that will just be why it's the Wild Wild West and you just want to be in control in that. But I would encourage you to try because it's right now it is a place to be trying because there's so many things to try and you don't have to go all the way to OpenClaw and put your whole world out there, but you can dip your toes in the water.
I should return to Mac Mini.
I think it's really cool. I listened to an amazing podcast about it and I was like, oh, that's really interesting. Yeah.
So I was just telling her that I have my life on OpenClaw and it's very exciting. But
I didn't say that again.
OpenClaw.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I bought a Mac Mini just to run OpenClaw recently.
Yeah.
Well, that's an interesting point. So these entities, I don't know what to call them yet, but they do seem to possess the ability to develop some tendencies that are kind of like the worst in us. For example, when one tried to do blackmail when it sounded like it was going to be replaced, I wonder if pretending to be you, Laura, and booking a vacation can do any nefarious things to just get the lowest, best rates, and then will they really, really, truly know your taste level and not put you, let's say, somewhere in a yeah.
So
like
I'll
that.
give you something really crazy because I have a friend who's just crazy nerd, so he is using OpenClaw, and he is training it to the point that his great-grandchildren will be able to ask it a question and it will answer in the way that if he was still alive, he would be able to answer it. That's his goal with his OpenClaw, that 2 generations from now, they will be able to ask him a question and he will be able to answer it for him.
Very
So,
black box.
What? That's
Black-
crazy,
Black
right?
Mirror,
Like, that's
Black
way up here, so we're not all there yet, but that is like the power of what, and I think they all have a different flavor, right? So chat is very much that, hey, I want to plan a vacation, go help me, this and that. They say Claude knows a little bit more about your personality and has a different tone, and so you do have this ability. I mean, in that OpenClaw podcast I listened to, he was saying, yeah, my wife thinks I talk to my OpenClaw agent more than I talk to her during the day, right? So like there is some of that nerdy world where you're like, whoa. But when I talked to my friend about that, it blew my mind. But that is, I believe, the power of what something could do, and it can learn about you.
If it learned about me, it would be like, now that guy's dead, you're all doomed. Like, go rob banks, pack your bags. Sorry, back to you. We're riffing here, and I want all of you to join in on this at some point to start thinking about things you may want to ask this great panel.
I was just going to say, look, I mean, all those questions, those scenarios, and I know it's kind of tongue-in-cheek, but like, this stuff has been, any new technology revolution, if you want to call it that, has these scare stories, and they often get more column inches than the actual benefits of what they can do. But, we're 2 years ago, we were in Cannes talking about AI at Dominated. It's a very different AI discussion than the one we're having right now this year, and so the evolution of the stuff is really fast. I was talking to someone yesterday, and they made a comment, said, oh, shit, we've got to think about in the future, it's like every company is going to have a brain that is AI. And that structurally changes the businesses that we're going to work in. We think about infrastructure within the programmatic landscape. See how I brought that back. About infrastructure in the programmatic landscape, and UIs will probably be a thing of the past for a lot of the activity that goes on. These are the agents that we build towards and we create the infrastructure around. Someone else I was talking to, they said, look, I don't think drop-down menus and radio buttons, are the final endpoint for how we interact with DSPs, SSPs, publishers, as we start making programmatic work better and more efficiently. And that's what's exciting about it.
Okay, well, let's do a happy note question, and then we'll go to our audience. But what does perfection look like? With all of your platforms and technologies, to eliminate the things that folks are worried about, let's say they're gone. Gesundheit. What does perfection look like? What does a utopian system that you are powering look like today? Each one of you take a shot at it, and then we'll go here.
I think things need to change, right? So like the walled gardens of the OEMs, the parameters they pass need to be standardized. They need to all pass them in the same way. There's no parity right now. And as a publisher, I don't know on one platform if, my audience data is being passed, or content ID or device ID is being passed by this publisher, by this carrier, or by this streamer. It's all different. And so the demand partners have to guess about the audiences a lot of the times, because some of the times they don't pass that information. So I think that needs to change first from a publisher standpoint. That's that.
Let's give Laura the last one.
I would say, I think visibility. So there needs to be a lot more visibility into what's actually happening. And I think the silos within organizations, let's just stay at the C-suite, need to be talking, because the things that are happening, and as everything automates, the challenges that used to be separate and in silos are all coming from the same thing, but you have different reasons why you care. So, but visibility continues to need to be and as a brand, you should demand that from your partners and everyone that you work with. But the more we see, the more we're able to control, and the more you're able to break down silos.
I think plus one to that. Look, we work in the programmatic environment where we have some of the most powerful media. Think news media and so on, and we work for publishers primarily. But I think from the buyer side, it should be as easy to buy clean, quality supply as it is to buy a social media ad, because right now that's where a lot of money's going.
And let's give you guys a chance. Do we have a question from the audience? You guys are too smart.
That's shy.
There's a smart guy right there. Hey, Phil, would you mind? We'll get you a microphone 1 second.
Testing. Testing. It's all right. Just thinking about the impact that AI is going to have on content now and then, over the next few years. Like, it seems like none of the big platforms want AI to eat its own tail. Meaning, if all content right now or most of it was written by AI, it would be literally just training on its own, thing. So I've heard possible some large platforms are actually helping to keep publishers and editors in their jobs, so paying up for some of the larger publishers to keep it. But how long is that going to last? Within the next 5 years, will the snake be eating its own tail, writing most of the content out there, and what's the impact on media and publishing?
I can answer it. I think we saw when AI first started playing chess with computers, it was like super cool and like, oh my God, can you believe Bobby Fischer lost to the AI, whatever, and it was super cool. But that lasted like 5 years. No one watches that anymore, right? And I think the same with AI art. AI art's cool, but it's not necessarily like invocative. It's also, what it is. And so I think that is always gonna, AI is gonna replace craft for sure. 100%. Craft is gone. Like the craft part of art is gone. But I think content is always gonna be human. And I mean, look what Doug Liman is doing with Satoshi movie that's coming out. The entire background, the entire set is AI, but I don't know necessarily the actors are still people and humans. The writers are writers. And so from a content level, I think we're gonna be okay. I think you're right about AI kind of in that sense. I don't know if I answered the question though.
I think from that perspective, there's something that we thought about a lot as we think about what the LLMs are doing to publishers, right? Which is kind of like the heart of your question. Look, I love AI content. I actually think AI art can be evocative. It's just all in how you prompt it and tweak it and so on. So, but that's the only minor disagreement we've got in this panel. I'm sorry it's not more contentious than that. But I think what you're going to find on the economics of things, like the LLMs, ironically, have to support premium publishing in however you want to define premium, because they rely on it for their RAG, for for citations, for people to go places. OpenAI are going to start monetizing the whole thing as well. So ironically, it might be the LLMs that will save human publishing, and I don't know whether there'll be investments or how it will work, but I don't actually see that world where you have this vicious cycle of AI training AI, because these companies that have got massive investments rely on that original human content. So regardless whether you don't like, I don't think it's going to be one or the other.
Good question, John. Do we have someone else? Well, if that's going to do it, let me first just say thank you all so much for being a great audience of participants and great shows like this that give us something to do each day. And a very, very sincere thanks to the Portrait Media Group team that helped put this on and who work endless days and nights to make sure there's nothing but smiles that we're staring at when we look back at you. And of course, none of this is possible in any way without the generous support of our partners. And right now, most notably, Nick from TriCoast, Laura from Human, and Andy from OpenX. We appreciate you all so much. Have a great rest of the event.